All right, good evening, everybody, and Happy New Year. Welcome to our first Books and Beyond event for year 2023. I am Pinky Shah from Ken Memorial Library, and I'll be your host for tonight, along with Sabina. We'll have an interactive question answer session towards the end. So at that time, feel free to raise your hand to ask your question or write your question in the chat, and we'll gladly ask it for you. Just as a reminder, again, as you know, we'll be recording this event so you can view it again. And meanwhile, please keep yourself on mute until we start the interactive session at the end. So tonight, we'll be talking to New York Times bestseller author, Nita Prose. Nita Prose is a writer and a longtime editor. The Maid, her debut novel, was a #1 New York Times bestseller, a Good Morning America book club pick, and an international bestseller, winner of the Ned Kelly Award for International Crime Fiction. The Maid has been published in over 40 countries in more than 35 languages. Nita lives in Toronto, Canada, and that's where she's joining us from tonight. Welcome, Nita, to Books and Beyond. Thank you again for joining us. Before we dive into discussing The Maid, can you please share a little bit about your background and your journey from longtime editor to becoming an author?
Hello, everybody, and thank you, Pinky. Thank you, Sabina, for having me here tonight. It's so nice to see all of you out there. I feel almost like I'm in your living rooms. So thanks for having me over for tea. You know, as you mentioned, Pinky, I am first and foremost an editor. I've been an editor for many years, and I'm a newbie when it comes to this other side of being a novelist, and The Maid is my debut novel. And you know what? I didn't even mean to write this novel. It happened to me. I swear, it just happened to me. A lot of writers, well, they'll sit down and think, I'm going to write a book. And that is not what happened to me. In 2019, I was in London at the London Book Fair, which is this event that happens every year where publishers and editors and agents gather and we talk about books and manuscripts and what's going on. And I was staying at a hotel. I left my hotel and I came back a little while later, opened the door to my room, and I completely startled the maid who was cleaning it. And I remember her sort of like jumping back into a shadowy corner. Now, this is the truly embarrassing part. She had something in her hands. It could have been worse, but it was still pretty bad. She had my track pants. They were sweaty and disgusting and turned inside out because I'd gone for a run in that morning. Then I was late for my meeting. I threw my pants on the bed, and that's what she was holding as she's looking at me embarrassed, and I'm looking at her embarrassed. And I thought to myself in that moment, oh my goodness, it is such an intimate and invisible job to be a roommate. She had been cleaning my room for days. Do you know how much she knew about me? She knew everything, okay? So, you know, it's funny how these little moments will happen and they can trigger all sorts of things in your life. I didn't think about it for days. And then I got on my plane ride. I was going home, back home to Toronto, and I started to hear this voice in my head. It wasn't this voice, this one. It was clean and crisp and precise. It was polished to perfection. And I didn't have any paper, so I grabbed the napkin from under my drink and I started to write what I was hearing. And what I ended up writing on that napkin was the prologue to The Maid. And I didn't even know it then, but that is when I started my debut novel.
Wow, what a story. That actually looks like that's an amazing story. So prologue has obviously a little bit of plot in it. So did you have, then you decided to write that you wanted to pull the thread from that prologue to turn into a story. Did you have from the beginning, the story was pretty clear that it's going to be a murder mystery or it's a whodunit kind of thing? Or once you started writing, it kind of evolved?
You know, I knew fairly early on, because of the tone of that prologue when it came out, I knew who the protagonist was. I knew quite a bit about her, that she was a maid, that she was, you know, ostracized, that she was invisible to the very high status guests in this 5-star hotel. And I knew that the hotel she worked at was a very grand, opulent, plush, elegant hotel. And I knew that there was a murder. I knew something went wrong right away. So I was instantly in that world. But it took me a little bit longer to sort of figure out, well, there's going to be something unusual about this world. As an editor, the kinds of novels that I'm most interested in are hybrid novels, novels that borrow from one genre and another. I call them Frankensteins. So I'm fascinated by Frankenstein novels. So I think of The Maid. Yes, it is a murder mystery. Yes, it is a whodunit. Yes, I want you to wonder, was it Rodney with, a spiked drink in the restaurant, or was it the maid with, a pillow in that locked hotel room? I want you to think about those whodunit aspects.
Yeah.
But beyond that, there's something else that's going on. This is a very character-driven world. And for me, I wanted to see if I could Frankenstein together a murder mystery with something the Brits called uplifting literature. A kind of novel that in America, where y'all from, you might call feel-good fiction.
Yes.
A novel that takes us through a journey of growth and has a hopeful ending and is invested in a journey of the spirit. And I asked myself, can I do this? Can I actually meld a murder mystery genre with uplet? And if I do, what will happen?
Huh. So now you had a hat of editor first, then you decided to put a hat of a writer. Was that a conflict in your head? Were you your worst critic when you were writing? Did you go back and forth? Did you edit your own book in your head that no, how was that process?
It was really intimidating. Some people think, oh, well, you were in the industry, you knew all the ins and outs. Well, and yes, I've certainly learned a lot about narrative form and craft from my authors. In fact, I credit them with teaching me everything I needed to learn about the craft of writing. But they didn't tell me one thing, Pinky. They didn't tell me about this feeling you have when you write. I'd seen it, I'd experienced it with the authors I've worked with, but there is a blindness that comes with being a writer. And I've often, as an editor, talked about something I call the labyrinth, which is a metaphor that I use to explain the difference between a writer and an editor. There's the writer, and she's standing before this labyrinth, and her job is to go through that maze of a story and make it out at the end. And it's hard though, because there are so many dead ends in that maze, and she doesn't always see them when they're coming. And the editor, that's me, or is sitting on a ladder outside of the labyrinth, looking down and saying, oh, honey, if you write that way, if you turn left up there into that story idea, you're going to hit a dead end and you're never going to find the end of your story. But when I was off of that ladder, when I became a writer myself, I felt so powerless. These tools, which I felt like I had such confidence with as an editor, suddenly felt remote. I asked myself thousands of questions, and yes, most certainly I did edit myself, but I didn't have that sense of rock solid confidence that I have as an editor. I was discombobulated and remained that way. And I think that's an essential part of writing. I
think that's a good way to do, because when you're writing, you write because you got to go with your instinct and the flow that you're feeling that way, instead of criticizing while you're writing. So that's very interesting analogy that you did. When you have a helicopter view as an editor, you can see if the writer is going in there. I love that, the way you put it. It's very interesting. Let's talk about our main character, Molly. So what was your thought process behind creating her character? Because some of us readers felt that she was on autism spectrum. Is that an accurate interpretation?
One of the things about this book is that I created a hyper real world. It is not an attempt to be a police procedural and to actually mimic reality. It is something else entirely. And that's true of character. It's true of the city it's set in, which I never named, etc. So there's just a murkiness in general. One thing that was important for me was to have the reader situate themselves behind Molly's eyes, to experience life from her unique point of view, and her job as a maid. And my hope was that to live a while as her would be to love her. I do think, though, that there are certain kinds of readers who require a label. And you'll see that I resist that. You'll see that on the copy of the book and anywhere else, I never give her a diagnosis. I'm not interested in psychologizing her. People are not so simple. I cannot tell you who you are in one word. And my goodness, you cannot tell me. And what a wonderful thing.
Right.
You know, through the lens of her eyes, I hope that people would come to a compassionate understanding of who she was and that she was different. But I was really worried that if I put a label on her from the beginning, she's this kind of person, she's that kind of person, you know, she has this so-called deficit or diagnosis, then, you know, one of the major points of the book would be lost. I've always said that this is a book about what it means to be the same as everyone else and yet entirely different.
Entirely different.
If I pointed out the different part, my concern was a lot of readers would go in saying, oh, that's not me. That is somebody other. This is not me at all. And separate themselves when my whole goal as a writer was to have you live as her, to invest in her, to love her, and to grow compassion from being her. So you'll see there's an absence of labels for that reason.
But I see your point, because once you put certain label, then I might not be able to associate, versus right now you don't have a label, but I do find I might relate to one characteristics of Molly and somebody else might relate to another characteristics of Molly.
Exactly.
So you can, that's probably the editor in you wrote it.
I did it rather unconsciously to begin with, but you know, it's funny how once you do that, then you start to study what you did later once it's over, right?
Yeah, what was your thought process behind it subconsciously? Yeah, no,
that's right.
Do you have any next book in making?
I do. So if you like The Maid, you'll be happy. If you didn't, you won't. So,
we are here, so clearly we are fans.
I'm gonna guess that you're here because you're a fan.
Yes.
So I'm actually writing a kind of sequel prequel to The Maid, and I'm hoping it'll be out in 2024. We're not sure yet. But basically, I've pulled off another Frankenstein. So there is a mystery in the present tense. Molly is a head maid at the Regency Grand Hotel. But in the past tense, we see Molly at a different time in her life, when she was younger and when she was living with Gran. And in that story, we visit almost another genre. And it is only through the past that we can solve the mystery in the present tense.
Okay, so the Gran would be a live character.
Gran was a live character, reimagined through memory in this book as well. Yeah.
Looking forward to have some wisdom from Granny in next book.
It's new wisdom, it's different, but yes.
Yes. Do you want to share do you know if this book is turning into any shows or movies, or because I definitely see.
Yes.
Something.
Yes. So Universal Pictures has bought the movie rights.
Wow.
And I'm pretty excited about that possibility. And, you know, we're working our way on the script now. I'm not the screenwriter, thank goodness, because that's a very specialized art form. But hopefully we will see it on screen sometime in the future. And there was a question there in the chat. My next book is going to be out probably 2024.
Okay.
Yeah.
Wow. Now, do you, so what would be your part when it's turning into a movie? You said, do they have to, it depends probably on your contract. Do they have to run it by you? Because, so they are not totally changing the storyline or anything without you knowing?
They are allowed to do mostly what they want. I'm consulted, but I do not have veto rights over anything. And the good news is that, you know, I've read the script, I've been reading along with the various iterations of the script. And while it is different, one of the very exciting parts for me as a creator is seeing another writer, seeing a screenwriter develop a world in ways that I never would have seen possible, and that have some fidelity to the base principles of that universe. Wow. So it'll be the same, but different.
But different. Would you like to share any of your current favorite reads, or what's on your nightstand kind of stuff?
You know what I'm reading right now, which is the same thing that the entire world is reading. Can you guess what it is?
Oh boy. No, don't say Colleen Hoover.
No, I'm not reading Colleen Hoover. I have, but I'm not right now. But that was a very good guess. That was a very good guess. Since she is owning the New York Times bestseller list, she's got like 7 spots every week. That is an excellent guess. I am reading Spare.
Oh, of course.
Me too.
Of
Yes.
course.
So, Prince Harry's memoir. And I am fascinated by it for a very different reason than a lot of people. Because I work in this industry, I know that's a ghostwritten book, right? He didn't write it himself. I am fascinated by ghostwriting. I love ghostwriters. I've done that myself. And I love to see how a really good ghostwriter, and the ghostwriter on this is incredible, is able to capture the essence of a life on the page and bring somebody else to life. It's an extraordinary skill, and I find it a really compelling memoir. I mean, say what you like about, if you like the monarchy, you agree with him, don't. It's an incredible memoir.
Yeah. But do you think being a ghostwriter, is that something that you never find out who these people are?
Well, this one is fairly public. He names the ghostwriter right in the acknowledgements. It's the same ghostwriter as the Andre Agassi's memoir Open, which was another extraordinary memoir. So it's no coincidence. This is just an amazing writer. So sometimes the ghostwriter is explicitly named, and sometimes they are not.
Do you see that happening with nonfiction more than fiction?
Oh yeah, with fiction it happens, but it's much more rare.
Yeah, because nonfiction, there are people who are not writers, but they have story to tell, and that's
right.
These ghostwriters.
That's right. Exactly right.
I had to do some more research. Which other books are written by ghostwriters?
Oh, there's some.
Nita, it was a great book. I enjoyed reading it very much. And
Thank
I'm wondering, you're welcome. It was a page turner. Are you going to use some of the same characters in your next book?
Very good question. And yes, there are some repeaters. So certainly we're going to learn much more about Mr. Preston. He comes back. There is also a host of new characters, but Mr. Snow is back. Mr. Preston is back. There's going to be a new bartender to replace Rodney. And she's pretty kick-ass, let me just say. She's not quite like Rodney. She's not a fraud. She's quite entertaining. And then, there are some other characters who I won't mention, but you'll come to meet them in a new place outside of the Regency Grand period for a journey of growth. And yet that week is so seismic for this young lady that it actually changes her. And by using present tense, again, it allows me to situate you close to the event, in it, moment by moment, and to have a limited point of view, limited not only by perspective, but also by that frame of reference of time, So that's very astute. You're right that a lot of novels aren't going to do that. They're going to move us to the past tense and set us at a remove. But, given what I've said to you about my intent for the novel, it was very important for me to give a sense of immediacy, and not only the locked room sensibility of that hotel, but the very locked room sensibility of a first person point of view. You can't escape being Molly when you're in there. You are her. The same way you are you now, and I am me. There's no escaping this for as long as we live, right? And I wanted you to feel that claustrophobia that she feels living her life the way she does, moment by moment.
Thank you.
Thank you, Nancy.
There's another question in the chat.
Okay.
Would you like to comment on the implied, I like this clever question. Would you like to comment on the implied relationship between Gran, and the doorman, Mr. Preston? Might we hear more about that in the next book? Okay, Karen, you are my new favorite reader. Because you are very astute and you pick up all the little breadcrumbs that a writer leaves behind, and that is very thrilling for someone like me. So you have picked up on something here that I have dropped, that I have not answered, that I wanted you to bring your thoughts to, your intuitions to. And yes, this is something that you will hear much more about in the next book.
Wow. Impressive. Thank you. That was a great question.
Indeed.
Do we have anybody else? I have like multiple pages I need to go through to see hands. All right, thank you. Made me smile.
Me too.
Price, Mrs.
Yeah,
Price. Has a question.
go ahead, Barbara. Yep. Go
Yeah,
ahead.
some reason, oh, I'm sorry, someday, I updated, I'm just a Zoom user now, I don't know, I don't have a name. But who would you like to see play Molly in a, TV show or a movie? Who do you see in
Well,
that role?
currently attached to the film is the actress Florence Pugh. She's a British actress. She was in the Marvel movie Black Widow. She most recently was nominated for a BAFTA, I believe, for her incredible role in The Wonder. And she's extraordinary. So in my dream cast, she is there. And fortunately, in real life, it looks like she may also be there. And what I really like about her is, as an actor, is the unusual choices she always makes on the screen. She can always play something very simply, and she never does. She defies all logic, and she gets away with it. And I think that sort of natural tendency in her as an actor, as a performer, matched with the character of Molly, is going to be electric. So.
I felt reading, and I love the book. I was tired reading it because I felt that Molly just did so much work continuously. Being.
Yes.
And her ability to process what was happening to her as well as what was happening to others, and how it affected her and how it affected others. I mean, she not only worked at her job, but she worked at just being. And at times I went, wow, she's taken on a lot. I mean, a lot of us go through life kind of easily, and we function we're able to do it spontaneously. She wasn't very spontaneous.
No, she wasn't.
I mean, she had to learn as she went along. Her job was spontaneous because she had done it so much. But for life, every time she stepped foot in it with a different person or a different situation, it was brand new to her.
Yes.
So, but I thoroughly enjoyed it. Thank you so much.
Those are really remarkable observations. And it's very clear that my Kent Memorial Library readership, you folks are pretty darn astute. You're very careful readers. I always think of writing a book as a partnership. I put something out there. I put out an outline, essentially. I don't color in everything, but it is your job to finish off the story for me. I start, you finish. So when I hear you speaking, it just moves me so much because I started something and you completed it in the most beautiful way with your thoughts and your feelings towards this character. And that shows me so much about who you are.
Oh, thank you.
We have one more question in the chat by Sandy is, will the next book reveal more about Molly's parents?
Again, you people, you're clever readers. You know exactly where I'm going. Yes, it will. It will. So not only will we learn more about Gran and Mr. Preston, we will also learn more about Molly's specific roots and her parents. Yes, we will.
Okay. All right. We are really looking forward for that. And hopefully in 2024, we can have you again in this program.
I would love it. I hope you all return.
Such a great book, and we can't wait for your next book, and we wish you a very good luck for that.
Well, thank you to all of you careful readers out there. Thank you, Pinky, Sabina, for having me today. Thank you for running a fantastic library and making reading accessible to so many people, because that matters very, very much.
Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. Have a good night, Nita.
Good night, everyone.